Okay, it's Friday, February 23rd. It's 9 a.m. And I would like to call to order the park chair meeting. At this time, we'll take any public comment on non-agenda items.
I see none.
Seeing none, we will move on to our first public hearing item. The project title is the SOM remodel. The summary is consideration of a minor scale application in the historic residential zone district for an alteration of a rated structure that will not increase its floor area per LUC 7-203.A.3.C. Legal description is Lot B, Block 3, the West Telluride Edition. The address is 427 West Columbia Avenue. Zone district is historic residential. The owner is Bodhi Sam. Applicant E. Cummings Architect. Scott Landefeld. Staff member John Wenzel, Public Preservation Director. Jonna.
Thank you. I have just a very short presentation. This application is quite straightforward, but this is at 427 West Columbia, which is listed as a local landmark and is the Som House, but also known historically as the Cornell House. The project proposes to add a window well in the basement on the west facade of the house. The house is located on the north side of West Columbia, just west of Aspen Street. There are a number of rated structures on the block and in the vicinity. You might remember that Eric Cummings proposed a work session a few months ago for a new addition on the rear of this house. And I think there were some other encumbrances on the lot that we weren't aware of at the time. And so maybe Scott can speak more to this, but the owners have decided to forego the addition and remodel the house, including the basement, adding living space in the basement, for which they would need a window well. So the window well is on the west side, which is minimally visible from the street. It doesn't change the context, mass, or scale of the house. Because it is in the flood zone, I believe 3-foot walls are required around the well. And so staff mentioned in the memo that you might just want to discuss possible landscaping options for the well, but I did not include it as a condition. Other than that, staff recommends approval of the application. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions. What do you got, Scott? Mr. Landfield.
Thank you, sir. Yes, we did originally propose an addition, but the amount of disturbance required, the clients decided to back off that and just provide space for their grandkids, future grandkids, in the form of a bunk room in the lower level. We have met with Sam Samuelson regarding the window well height, and the new FEMA regulation requires that to be 3 feet. So I sort of had mentioned to staff that it was up to them to discuss with Sam if we could reduce that in any way, but it sounds like that's just something we have to do. It is currently concealed by an existing site wall, so I don't see much disturbance as far as the appearance from the street.
Okay.
That's all I have.
So now we'll enter board chair discussion where I'll talk to myself.
Would you like to take public comment?
Oh, yes. Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
You're our only member of the public. No.
Seeing none, we'll move into board discussion. I think we can discuss landscaping. From one of the rendering views, it looked like the window well really is not visible behind that stone wall, especially from the sidewalk, which is considerably lower. I'm not as concerned perhaps with needing to shield it anymore because the stone walls, it seems, is already doing that. So I'm not gonna add it as a condition either. I trust your client will consider landscaping in that area as appropriate. I move to approve the alteration to rated house at 427 West Columbia Avenue based on the staff memo dated February 23, 2024. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at public hearing held on February 23, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void unless otherwise indicated. The revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to the drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may excuse me, may result in more than one submittal being required.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Even though Stacy did all that, I do not need revised plans, which is.
Oh, because there's no condition.
There's no condition.
There's no condition. Perfect. All right.
We've only run into that once before. No conditions.
Thank you guys for your time. Have a great weekend.
Me too.
Okay, we'll move on to the second action item. The project title is Lot 20 Galena. This is a consideration of application for a minor scale addition to an existing building in the historic residential zone district located inside the THLD that will increase the structure's floor area more than 25%, resulting in a building less than 1,000 square feet per LUC 7-203.A.3.C.1. And B, a minor scale repositioning of a THAS secondary structure per LUC 7-203.A.3.C.4. The legal description is a portion of lot 20 lying south of Cornet Creek, block 12, West Telluride Edition. The address is 477 West Galena Avenue. The zone district is historic residential. Owner is Telprop 19 LLC. Applicant is McAllister Architects LLC. Staff member is John Wenzel.
Okay, thank you. This is a project for 447 West Galena, otherwise known as Ed's Shed. It is located at on West Galena, just north of the Telluride Elementary School. It's located in the Historic Residential Zone District and the Historic Residential Treatment Area. This project proposes to reposition the shed north and east. As you can see on the survey, the shed is significantly encroaching into the right of way on the south and minimally on the west. But the proposal is to put it entirely on the lot and to raise the structure 12 inches from its current level. However, moving it will require an increase in the amount it's raised, and Michael can explain that more thoroughly. And then also the project proposes a minor scale addition to the rear of the structure. So a couple of years ago in 2019, HARC held a work session on the repositioning of the historic shed and the construction of an addition, which was at that time a residential structure, which was on lot 19 and 20. This is a different proposal that would be limited to just the south portion of lot 20. The 0-foot setbacks proposed on the south and west sides have been approved by variance through P&Z in December of 2023. And so that has been approved and can now be approved by HARC. And that includes the eaves, so there would be no encroachment into the right of way on either side. So staff is recommending, let's see, 11 conditions, which I'll go through at this time. I do want to remind the chair that this is a minor scale application. The chair has the option to approve the application, continue the application, or elevate the application to the full board if you deem it to be of special interest to the board or the neighborhood. So if the chair wants to elevate the application, it could be heard at the April 17th HARC meeting. And we can talk about dates at the end, but I'll get through the conditions first. Proposed condition number 1 was to minimize the degree to which the historic structure is raised to preserve the historic relationship of the building to the site. Now, right now, the building is below grade on the northwest corner, which is adjacent to the Cornet Creek. And it's clear that the building does need to be raised for its preservation. Again, I would ask Michael to talk more specifically about how much it needs to be raised. My concern with this condition is only that the relationship of the building to the grade after it's repositioned be maintained as much as possible. Condition number 2 is to revise the addition to be compatible in size and scale with the main building. I will say this is a small addition. It's a small project. It's a small shed. The non-historic additions of the shed are to be removed and this new addition added at the back. I don't know that it would meet the guidelines for being subordinate. And you can talk about that as well, applicant. Condition number 3 was to revise the materials and treatment of the addition to be compatible with the historic structure and those found historically in the treatment area. And 7 is related, which is to revise the plate metal siding to an appropriate material. Again, this is a shed that's becoming a residence. Therefore, the range of residential or primary structure materials in the historic residential treatment area is does not include plate metal siding. Condition number 4 is a wetland setback variance will be required from the planning director once the project is approved by HARC. And condition number 5 is to coordinate tree removal in the right of way with Public Works. I know Michael's been speaking with Public Works and that should be addressed. Condition number 6 is to revise the addition's roof form to be more traditional in slope, symmetry, and treatment. The addition is kind of a wedge shape with a shed roof, but extremely contemporary, with no eaves, kind of asymmetrical shape. And I would venture to say I don't think we've seen anything like this in the historic district this far. Condition number 8 is to revise the windows in the addition to be consistent with the windows guidelines. There are a few windows that are of non-traditional proportions that could be revised, and I understand the design intent is to be contemporary. But again, the conditions or the guidelines don't support that. Condition number 9 is to ensure all exterior doors are no more than 2/3 light. Condition number 10 is to indicate location of snow storage on site. And then the final condition is to revise light fixture A to be more in character with the historic structure. And that I'm happy to answer any questions. And Michael has a presentation as well provided.
So I do have one question for staff. On the survey, this is designated as a portion of lot 20 and it looks like there's a property line in the creek.
Yes, so I did verify this with the planning director who's confirmed that this is a lot of record. And so it's an existing lot. It's an existing non-conforming lot, but it is a separate lot.
Okay, it's just different. It's not
It is
20R.
different.
It's
No.
a portion of 20, but
a
it's its own
portion.
lot.
It is its own lot.
Okay, so then this is changing then from a secondary structure to a principal.
And we have seen that in other cases, not very often, but we have seen secondary historic structures become principal structures.
And the other way.
And the other way.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, okay, I just wanted to be clear.
Yes, thank you.
Um,
Do you want me to share? I can share it.
Is that right?
That's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me find my,
I guess I haven't been here since, so I'm supposed to bring my laptop. in the future, is
It's-
that right?
typically, but I'm happy to do it today.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, just let me know when you want to advance.
Okay,
Morning, Stacy.
applicant presentation.
Thank you. So, were you here for the last application for this, or
I
were you?
I remember this project. I think I was in planning and zoning when the three houses to the east went through. And I don't remember quite why, but I do remember attending the HARC meetings during that time. Cause I think there was interplay back and forth between HARC and P and Z. I don't though, probably recall a more recent one. That was back in, I don't even remember, 20.
It was 2019 when we had an application from a different applicant. Jack
Okay.
Wesson was proposing a different project, but we did a site walk to the shed and talked about the additions and moving the shed and all
recall.
of that, so.
And the only reason I bring it up is because I want to make sure that you understand, I think with the repositioning of the shed, that was done with respect to the past boards. When we first, or when I first started working on this, I kind of went through all the old HARC, P and Z applications. And I know different boards at different times make different decisions, and that's normal, fine, but I just want to recognize that when we started, I actually think the first application I put forward to the town was for the historic shed to stay exactly where it is and not to move it, and that was based on comments that I had read from HARC at the time. But it became very clear as we started working on it, you know, on the staff level that there were some issues with that, primarily from Public Works and the neighborhood related to the sidewalks, snow plows hitting the shed. Obviously, some of the just legal logistics of having a building that's not on your own property. It just became very messy. So I just wanted to make sure you understood that it wasn't sort of flippant to move the shed from the applicant side. It was with the community on it. So we did, and can you advance that, John?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, it's no crazy.
Pain in the butt.
Oh.
That we, this is just the neighborhood, so maybe the next one. That we looked at moving the shed, the minimum amount possible, given those HARC conditions. So what the application for is to move the shed all the way into the property, including the roof eaves. And actually we went back and forth on that a little bit just to make sure that we didn't want that overhang with an encroachment agreement. But the sentiment that was that we wanted it completely off the property. And so we did that and were able to get the approval from P&Z with full support, I think, from everybody, including the community, once they understood what we were asking for. And so that's why we're moving that onto our property. And if you can flip a little bit, Jonna, maybe another one. Sure, that's a good one. So this shows on the right the shed as it is today with the non-historic addition to the east, and then on the left side with that section being removed. And it shows where it is on the site, and it shows the topography fairly well. So as far as the elevation above, I'm happy to take your guys' comments on this and make adjustments. Right now, the building, it's the front door, as near as I can tell, there was a wood floor inside the historic shed, and part of that is still there, part of it is rotten away. And that there was a base piece of wood underneath that would have been 8 to 12 inches deep. And all of that is buried underground currently, as well as portions of the door on one side is buried. So I made the assumption that it's buried about 12 inches deep, and that maybe it's 10 to 12. On the north side of the property, it's buried about 4.5 feet. So, I'm not sure what that is or why. I can imagine it's flood debris from Cornet Creek over the years. Of course, that's been cleaned up quite a lot, but it's just a lot of soil up there. So the idea of lifting it to 12 inches for me was to get it back to that, say 8 to 10, and then also thinking that because we're against the right of way, I just imagine that over the next 10 years, there's going to be other landscaping or work in that buffer, and that I just didn't want to be all the way down at 0. So that's why I set the 12 inches and looked at doing a stone base there. On the north side, I'm assuming that there's a lot of rot in the wood, so we'll work with that in a foundation situation. So I don't think the height is as important there. What Jonna was mentioning as far as the overall height of the building from a USGS point of view, the overall increase is actually about 3 feet in building height, and that's simply because of where the shed is located on the property. I can't regrade the right-of-way other than adding the sidewalk, so I'm kind of stuck with the topography that I have. And so that's where the vertical elevation came in. I think the next part of the project, if I break it into pieces, is the historic preservation point. If you can flip, John, up. Sorry, that was a slide to show the burying. Maybe one more. So from the historic preservation standpoint, this is a sheet showing the existing structure. Again, the east section is non-historic, and so what you can't see when you do a site walk is that there are actually 2 openings in the sidewall. It's not quite apparent if those were doors or windows because it's been pretty hacked up in there. I don't know how they use this building. It's hard to find the history of this because it's not on the Sanborn maps. So the earliest indication I have, I think, is from the 60s or something, but I think the documents are showing that it's probably from the 1920s, the shed. But it's obviously had some history to it. I think always utilitarian. It's in fairly decent shape for what it is, I think. Obviously, the sections that have been buried are likely very rotten and will have to be replaced. But the non-historic pro panel roof that was put on has held up well, and it seems to be fairly square in sections of it. Back wall is totally warped. So the hope is that we can clean it up and lift it out of the ground, remove what's rotten, and then replace materials in kind, expose that east elevation again. And on the west elevation, there's actually no siding there. I'm not sure if there ever was, so we would replace that with new siding to match. Maybe the next slide. And then this is just looking at that section in the reconfiguration. So all we're looking at doing is cleaning and painting that material and then adding new windows to the openings that are existing. I'm proposing 2 new windows, one on the west and one on the north at the bathroom for the adaptive reuse. And I'm kind of sizing those based on the information that I have on the west elevation. That's a picture of the siding that exists today, so we can match that and clean and paint it. And then new pro panel roof and a stone base along the bottom. So I think I'm happy to lower that if you guys feel like it's too much of a lift. Again, my feeling was really I just don't know what the future is and how do we protect it into the future. It's not really a strong design point I'm trying to make with that. So if we want to reduce it from 12 to so hard to know what's going to happen. You don't control the property. But perhaps we can go to 8 to 10 inches. I'm not sure if that's helping us or not. I think it's going to be buffered pretty well with landscaping quickly. So I'm happy to take your thoughts on that. For the addition, I think, for the next one, John, I'm not sure how I've got these set up. Yeah, that's good. So I'll look at the site first. That was one of the conditions had to do with snow storage, but because sorry, my throat's really bad too. Sorry, guys. Because this is such a small piece of property, and once the shed is positioned where it is, and we account for parking and try to add an addition, that historic shed is about 250 square feet of ground area. And the addition that I'm showing here is about 250 square feet. So we're at, 500 square foot footprint, very small project, which is quite fun scale wise, but it's difficult for the site. So I'm looking at this as more of a urban context that we would do grasscrete and pavers. So it would have a lawn feel when no cars are parked there, and that we would just actively have to heat that space for snow removal. I don't think there's any way to deal with snow otherwise, so I think we're gonna have to take an active approach and do a dry well underneath that parking pad, which for the small size I think is reasonable. Everything on the site to the north is in the wetlands setback area. And we're working with Chris Hayes, and we've already started that process. He's already done a good review, but I'm gonna work with him quite closely on the final vegetation. I do have it noted here, but we'll be working very closely with him on that area. And then the remainder of the site is really in the right of way with Public Works. And if you can do one flip down, please. This shows, there's a number of trees. They're not intentionally planted trees. I think there's kind of a mess over there. And I'm gonna need to work with Public Works on this. They do have some information in the streetscapes, but it's a cartoon at best. And then the neighbors have a lot of feelings about it also, and I tried to speak with them. My feeling is that the Public Works is gonna need to open up that view corridor for traffic, because one of the comments that kept coming out at P&Z was cars sliding across intersections and children walking. And I don't know if people were dramatizing things, but certainly we should have some safety controlled in there. So I'm really going to look to Public Works to help me with this, and then I'll replant it as they like. And again, we have Chris Hayden working with us on this, so I'm confident that we'll come to a good solution here. The next one. So with the addition, and I won't go through each comment from John, as I think what I would say first is that if I'm off base here, and if you would like me to reimagine this a little bit differently as far as the addition is concerned, I'm happy to go do that and come back to you and think about this as sort of a mass and scale step in the process. But I do want to kind of explain where I was coming from with the design. I try not to do this stuff haphazardly, and if you can just maybe hear me out on my thought process, and then, like I said, I'm happy to bring this back to you with those conditions in mind. But first, instead of going through like each comment, I don't think that's maybe as productive. So with the addition, the idea was, again, I'm trying to get a little bit of square footage out of this house. It's very small. So if I'm lucky with the basement, I'm hoping to get about 11 to 1,200 square feet, where 600 square feet of that is underground. So it's a very small house, which is great. The height limit on this is 25 feet, but we're only at 17 or 16. 16 feet. So we're well under height, which of course I know doesn't matter because it's a relative issue, historic shed. So I don't mean to say anything with that, except that when you think about the rest of the neighborhood, and there is going to be a building next to this, those are all 25 feet. So I think it's important to remember that this is quite small, and that the addition, while perhaps it looks larger in these images, is going to be tucked well back. And my hope was architecturally that that I wanted to give all the power to the historic structure up front. So the reasoning was to keep that as a small home, expose, every corner, every piece of roofing in it that I could. And that's why I've got that single story element, flat roof element, separating the historic house from the addition, just to kind of keep it as clean as I could. And my hope was that by using the materials that I did and the roof form that I did, that section, while perhaps it's reading too contemporary, the idea was that it would really read as very secondary, was my feeling. It's tucked back into the trees, it's well back, and I think the rusted material being a secondary structure feels very secondary, and that the attention is being drawn to the historic painted home to the front. So that was the intent. And again, I'm happy to reimagine that, but that's where it was coming from. So you can go to the next slide, John. Maybe with materials, maybe one more. So the idea again was that with the house being set back, the front building being painted wood, with the existing siding, adding where needed, the dark standing seam metal roof, and the back structure being the rusted, more subdued material that would, I felt, fall away and be secondary. And the next slide shows how it's sits within its neighborhood, and obviously there'll be one more home there in between the two that will be a similar mass and scale to that. Sorry, I think I've hit on everything. I'm happy to change that light fixture. My thought was I was trying to use a different fixture for the structure to the rear, because I was sort of imagining it as almost a secondary structure, and that's where that was coming from. But I'm happy to switch that though.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about my voice.
Oh, it's all right.
Struggling.
So I do have a couple questions before we go to public comment. Regarding the height raise. It seems to me that as you push the house roughly 7 feet to the north, the topography rises.
Correct. And that's
So
where that,
what portion of the 12 inches would you say is purely attributable to the rising of the slope as you go north?
oh, I don't think any of it. I think the height increase attributed to moving it to the north is about 2 feet. And that the 12 inches that I'm talking about is related directly to its relationship with where it is today on site.
Okay. Because the north side will still be, the floor at the north was substantially below grade.
Correct. So that would still be 3.5 feet below grade.
Okay, and you're bringing, currently there's not foundation up to that point, so you'll lose a little material. Well, you'd lose it anyway, but
It's rotten.
okay. I think maybe that's my only question. So at this time, we'll take public comment if there is anyone.
No public comments.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to chair discussion. I think I'm pretty familiar with that intersection there at Galena and Townsend. It's one of my paths or routes of travel home when I drive back home from Clark's or whatnot. Galena there is it has a substantial cross slope. So the structure is already elevated or appears to be elevated. So, I mean, I'm sympathetic to minimize the degree. But I think 12 inches could very well be minimal. So I think, take all my comments, I think we're moving towards a continuance. I do think I'll keep it at chair and not elevate it. I think we can work through these things. So some of my comments will be, forward thinking. If 12 inches could be minimal, but just provide a little more reasoning. We're really talking about single digit numbers of inches. If it's 8 or 10 or 12, just rationalize why 12 is the right number. Regarding, first of all, the repositioning is, I'm wholly in support of. So really, I think most of the rest of my comments are going to be, aimed at the addition. On the one hand, given the site constraints and the unique plan shape, it lends itself to a much more contemporary form. So I totally understand and would normally be pretty psyched on the form of the addition. It certainly speaks to the guidelines that say it should be from its own time. It shouldn't be confused for a historic structure. It shouldn't, be replicating a historic form or get confused. It certainly is separate and obviously of its own time. But the other thing you have going for you is I'm quite a lot more liberal with the idea of visually subordinate. Some people take subordinate flatly as lower than. I don't. I think visually subordinate, it's further back on the lot. You have perspective working for you. I'm okay with the form being somewhat higher. The way though that this projects up and away from stretches it further than I'm comfortable with subordinate. There are multiple factors working together to really break down that subordinate feeling. The no eaves in the materials. The material one's pretty straightforward because this is a principal structure. You're pretty much limited to vertical or horizontal wood siding or brick. If this were a secondary garage off of a primary that was on the site, there's some more flexibility with some metal siding. We just went through this Wednesday night at HARC. So materials need to comply with that guideline. I think a roof form, certainly a shed roof could be appropriate, but such a prominent shed roof that's projecting up and out of the site, not down to the visible side yard setback. It'll be I understand that'll be a bit of a challenge with that unique plan shape, which is you have to go that direction with Cornet Creek. Having a more traditional roof form will be a challenge. But I think it's just several factors making that far too contemporary in the historic residential district. The other conditions are pretty straightforward. The wetland setback variance is kind of boilerplate. Coordination of tree removal, public works is boilerplate. I just spent some time talking about number 6, the roof form, plate metal siding not being consistent with HR 24A2. Ensuring the doors are no more than 2/3 light is a pretty common condition. Snow storage and the light fixture. The only other thing there is then to talk about is the revision to windows in the addition. And I think it looks to me like on the east side there are windows that are maybe floor to not ceiling, but they begin at the floor. That's not usually a window configuration we see in the historic district. So maybe rethink that east side, the small window on the south up high will change as a function of a roof redesign, but that size I think is appropriate. And I think that's all the discussion I need to have. Okay. I then would like to make a motion. I would move to continue to the April 19, 2024 HARC chair meeting. The minor scale application for 477 West Galena Avenue, a portion of lot 20 lying south of Pornet Creek, block 12, West Telluride addition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated February 23, 2024, 1 through 11 as stated. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on February 23, 2024, with notice of such hearing provided as required in the Telluride Land Use Code. And because it's being continued, I don't have to read that last part, right? Okay. Thank you.
These next two items on the agenda. On the agenda, I've asked for them to be continued without discussion. I think we're at a point where they could be tabled. Because I don't know when they're going to come back. So if you'd
Okay.
like to table the items 3 and 4. Good.
Then I'll move to table. Item number 3, I need to read the whole, everything, right?
No, you don't have to, just make your motion.
Okay. I move to table. The CNC house continued from the September 22, 2023, November 17, 2023, December 15, 2023, and January 19, 2024 HARC chair meetings. Is that it?
That's good.
Okay. And then number 4, I move to continue, or I move to table the View House, which was continued from the November 17, 2023 meeting, the December 15, 2023 meeting, and the January 19, 2024 HARC chair meetings.
Thank
you. Okay. I don't see any board or staff discussion.
Nope.
So then I move to adjourn this meeting by unanimous consent
At 9:43.
at 9:43.
Thank you very much.
Nice job, Stacey.
Yes, very good job.